Hello, Mishpacha, it's Courtney, America's Jewish mother. Long time no see. So I'm back with my wrap-up of my reading that I did in the month of September, and just like a little update on books that I'm currently working on / am planning to read in October. This is not an official TBR or pile of possibilities or whatever. This is just kind of an update. So I ended up reading not 7, 8. I ended up reading 8 books in the month of September. I had a lot going on in September. It was pretty crazy. I had a ton of grading to do. There were Jewish High Holy Days. Had a lot of service commitments at work I also had to attend to. So I was pretty pleased that in the midst of all of that, I still managed to read 8 books, which is not as many books as I have read. I think that's the fewest number of books I've read in any month this year in its entirety, but you know what? It's fine. I'll take it. It's been pretty stressful. So anyway, so as usual, I'm ranking these in the order in which I enjoyed them, from least enjoyed up to most enjoyed. So in last place for books that I read in September, unfortunately, is Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amos. This is sort of described as the quintessential campus novel. It follows Jim Dixon, who is a lecturer of medieval history. And he's kind of like the adult version of Holden Caulfield from Catcher in the Rye, as far as I'm concerned. And so he's quite an unlikable main character, and he just came across to me as like a big whiner. And so even though there were things that happened in this novel that were sort of comical or just sort of over the top in their ridiculousness, I did not connect with him as a main character. And so I didn't really enjoy this book overall. Also, this book was originally published in the 50s, and there's definitely some misogyny that's baked into the narrative. There are like casual jokes about suicide and things of that sort. So didn't get on with it as much as I would have liked. So this ended up getting 2.5 stars. Sorry, I just want to mute my laptop there. So that was number 8. In number 7 spot was How to Pronounce Knife by Souvankham Thammavongsa. This is a collection of short stories. I did this as a buddy read with Brian at Bookish. And I think we both felt pretty similarly overall about the collection, which is that we were kind of underwhelmed. So all of the stories, pretty much all of the stories, feature Laotian immigrants to Canada and kind of talk about the experience of Laotian immigrants to Canada. And I appreciated that aspect of them. But after a while, the stories kind of ran together and got very sort of samey. And there were a couple that stood out for me from the collection. The title story, and then there was a story, I think that was the last one, about picking worms, that I also quite liked and still kind of stands out to me. But yeah, almost none of the other ones at this point could I tell you anything of substance about, and I read it, finished it 3 weeks ago or whatever that was. We took the first 2 months of the first 2 weeks of the month to read it. So that ended up getting 3 stars from me. I would read something else by Souvankham Thammavongsa, because I do think she knows how to evoke an emotion, and I like that her writing is very clear. So I appreciated that about her work, so I would read something else by her, but this I did not like as well as I wanted to, so 3 stars. And number 6 was The Devil in Webster by Jean Hanff Korelitz. This is also a campus novel, but in this case it's from the perspective of the college president of Webster College, Naomi Roth, who is the first female and Jewish president of this school, and she finds herself kind of embroiled in controversy when a popular professor of color is denied tenure, and then a bunch of students take up residence on the campus quad in protest, including Naomi's Naomi's own daughter Hannah, who is a sophomore at this school. So I think it has a good premise, but for me it just dragged a lot in the middle, and Naomi just kind of sat around twiddling her thumbs, not doing anything. And I did not like that aspect of it. And then when it's resolved, it's like the whole thing is basically resolved for her instead of her actually doing anything to resolve things herself. So I didn't like that aspect of it either. So I was entertained. I do think it raises some interesting questions, especially about identity politics and about how people can oftentimes put their passion for a cause ahead of the actual facts of the matter, which I think we see happen on both sides of the political spectrum. So I appreciated those elements of it, but I didn't like it as well as I liked her previous book that I had read, The Plot. So this one ended up getting 3.25 stars from me. Then at number 5 was Philip Rucker and Carol Leonig's A Very Stable Genius. This is about the first 3 years of the Trump administration. And I learned a lot about this, a lot from this book, namely that the first 3 years of the Trump administration were even more chaotic than I actually knew, which is crazy. So I liked it overall. I found it informative, but I read this as an ebook, and because there was such a large rotating cast of, not characters, but figures, because so many positions in Trump's administration just became these revolving doors as he would hire somebody, fire them, hire someone new, fire them, hire another person. So I kind of wanted like a cheat sheet or something that I could refer to remind me who all of these people were, because some of them I remembered, but it was just like a lot of names and people to keep track of. So so that ended up getting 3.5 stars. So that was number 5. Then at number 4 was The Drunkard's Walk, How Randomness Rules Our Lives by Leonard and Mlodinow. This is basically a book about why humans are bad at probability and statistics, and specifically how we're bad at trying to, we have a habit of trying to make sense of and see patterns in things where they don't actually exist. So I found this a fairly engaging read overall. It did involve kind of more math than I was expecting, but there weren't any like big, long, scary strings of equations or anything like that. It was just a little bit more mathy than I had anticipated. One of the things I found most fascinating in this book was the Monty Hall problem, which basically posits that if you're on a game show and, you know, at the end of the game show or whatever, you get to choose between 3 doors, right? And behind one of the doors there's a prize, and behind the other 2 doors there's, you know, nothing, or, you know, like a goat or something that doesn't have any value to you, right? So you know, you pick one door, and then the host of the show opens one of the unchosen doors to reveal, you know, nothing or a goat or, you know, whatever the thing of not value is, right? So the problem asks, is it, but then the host offers you the chance to switch your original choice. So so the problem is it to your benefit to switch your choice of door? And even though people's knee-jerk impulse is to say, well, I mean, you know, it's 2 options. It's literally 50-50, right? Actually, it's to your benefit to switch to the door that you didn't originally choose. And yeah, that was really sort of mind-blowing to me. And there was a famous sort of controversy that went along with that problem that Mlodinow talks about, and that was also quite interesting to me. So just things like that I found quite fascinating. And yeah, like we're bad at probability, and by we I mean I'm bad at probability. But I assume Mlodinow didn't write this book because, you know, it's like just specifically for people who are bad at probability. I think, you know, he thinks most of us are probably not great at it. So so I did enjoy this overall. Would recommend it, especially if you were interested in probability, randomness, somewhat in human psychology. So yeah, 3.5 stars. Quite liked it. Would recommend it. So that was my 4th favorite book of the month. So at number 3 was The Old Drift by Namwali Serpell. I did this as a buddy read with Roz of Scally-Dandling about the books. This is kind of an epic, multi-generational novel about Zambia, the country of Zambia, and colonialism and technology and ways in which people try to keep Zambia on the cutting edge of things, and ways they try to sort of get Zambia on the map, so to speak, or at least like on the world stage, or at people's attention. So it's divided into 3 sections. The first section has 3 grandmothers. The middle section has 3 mothers, and then the last section has 3 children. And all of the 3 people are all from different family lines, but eventually all of these 3 different family lines converge by the end. And that's not a spoiler. That's, if you look at the little genealogy chart at the beginning, or map or whatever at the beginning, you will see that that's the case if the 3 family lines eventually converge. So that's not a spoiler. So I appreciated this book overall. I think Namwali Serpell writes well. I definitely learned a lot about Zambia and its history because I knew pretty much nothing about it before I read this book, so that was interesting and informative. I liked some of the characters more than others. For me, there were just too many characters to keep track of, and y'all know how I feel about books with more than like 3 or 4, central characters that you have to follow. I'm like, it's too many. I don't spend enough time with this person to connect with them, and that's pretty much exactly how I felt with this book. I felt like there were just too many people that I had to follow and keep track of, and so I didn't really feel that connected to or invested in any single one of them, even though I found some of the characters sort of more interesting or more compelling than others. And yeah, the other thing, and Roz and I had shared a similar complaint about this book, is that we kind of didn't love the ending of it, because there's a sort of twist, I guess in the fact that throughout most of the book you think that you're reading one kind of novel, but then at the end it kind of changes into a different kind of novel, without getting too spoilery about it or anything. So both of us sort of felt like that wasn't earned, I guess, in a way, and so we did not find that compelling. But I did appreciate that I learned a lot about Zambia and things like, in the middle of the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union, there were people in Zambia trying to get Zambia involved in the space race and trying to put what was called an Afronaut on the moon. I found all that very fascinating. So, so 3.5 stars. At number 2, so my second favorite book of the month was Dara Horn's People Love Dead Jews. This is an essay collection, and basically Dara Horn talks about instances in which dead Jews, specifically from the Holocaust, tend to be venerated in the public imagination, even as contemporary acts of anti-Semitism are ignored. And sort of the hypocrisy of that, I guess. And so she talks about movies that are made about the Holocaust. She talks about historical sites connected to the Holocaust. She talks about Jewish heritage sites in foreign countries that don't make any attempt to explain why there are no more Jews living in that country and there are only Jewish heritage sites, et cetera, et cetera. And then that's, then she also has essays about modern day acts of anti-Semitism in the United States. So I quite like this overall. I found it compelling and readable, and I would certainly recommend it as part of sort of anti-racism reading. So 4 stars. And then my favorite book of the month was Leonnig and Philip Rucker's I Alone Can Fix It, which is about Trump's final year in office. Now, you might be asking yourself, why was this my favorite read of the month when the first book, A Very Stable Genius, about the first 3 years of Trump's presidency fell in like the middle of my ranking? So the reason I liked this book so well is because it is focused on Trump's final year in office. So it literally starts on January 1, 2020 and goes all the way up through the Capitol riots in January of this year, and then it concludes with an interview that the two writers conducted with Trump in March of 2021. So it covers a little bit over a calendar year, about 15 months or so. And the thing that I liked about this book that I found kind of lacking from A Very Stable Genius is that I Alone Can Fix It, because it is focused on Trump's final year in office, is very much concerned with two main things, right? So the COVID pandemic and the 2020 election. And yeah, occasionally there are other things that come in and happen, like George Floyd's murder, and then after that, when Trump used the military to clear out Lafayette Square so he could go to this church and get a picture of himself holding up a Bible. So stuff like that occasionally comes in to disrupt the focus on the pandemic and the election. But the main two focal points of the book are the election and the pandemic. And I think because it has that clarity of focus, I liked it a lot more than I liked A Very Stable Genius. And y'all, I feel like I truly experienced every possible emotion that I could feel while I was listening to this book, because I listened to it as an audiobook. By the way, shout out to the audiobook narrator, January Lavoie, who did a great job with this production, and that was especially commendable because it was a very long audiobook. Ended up clocking in at, I think, something like 19 and a half hours, so good job, January Lavoie. So I experienced every possible emotion while I was listening to this book. I was astonished. I was angry. I was sad. I was happy. Seriously, every possible emotion. So, if you can stomach reading about Trump, I would highly recommend this book. I thought it was excellently done. I will say that for me, when I listened to the chapter on the Capitol riot, which pretty much breaks it down into a, not exactly minute by minute breakdown, but almost, that because that, only happened earlier this year, that was still, very raw for me, and I got all sort of, sad and upset about it again. But aside from that, I thought this was a really good book, and I feel like I got a lot out of it. And significantly, and I think I've said this in a previous Friday Reads video, but significantly one of the things I got out of it was that a lot of people in Trump's administration, even though I had kind of assumed that to be in Trump's administration, you would be not a good person, because why would you work for Trump if you were a good person? But what I learned is that a lot of people in Trump's administration, in fact, I think I might even be willing to say the majority of people in Trump's administration, at their core, really were decent people who were trying to do the right thing, and especially concerning things like the pandemic and the election. They were trying to get Trump to change course and do the right thing and not politicize the pandemic and stop pretending like he won the election or had some chance of winning the election, even though it was clear that he, after Biden won, that he didn't. So a lot of those people were trying to get him to change course and do the right thing, but he was just totally unmoved. So that I think was an important lesson for me to learn. So that was the best book I read all month. So those were the 8 books that I read in the month of September. So on to things that I'm currently reading in October. So I'm still making my way through the essential writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson. I am pleased to report that as of right now, I'm on page 621 of this approximately 850-page book. So I'm over 70% done with this. Will I finish in October? Probably not. November, I think we're gonna make it. So yeah, slowly but surely, I am working my way through Emerson. I'm also engaged in several buddy reads at the moment. So first, I have started a buddy read of Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut. This is actually the first Kurt Vonnegut novel I've ever read. And I have to say, I'm entertained so far. I'm doing this as a buddy read with Sam at Paper Not Books. So we're going to read this in 2 weeks. And then I have 2 month-long buddy reads that are going on. One is Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. This is for Victober. I am doing this as a buddy read with Cynthia of Book Whimsy. So this is probably going to take all month. And the other book that's going to take all month is Austerlitz by W.G. Sebald. I'm doing this as a group buddy read with Mark Nash, Brian at Bookish, and Sina from Beating Around the Books. And I think that's everyone who's included in the group read, I think. If I left you out, I'm so sorry. So this will take all month, and this is like one long, continuous thing that's interspersed with images. And when I say long, continuous thing, I mean like there are no breaks in the text, except with occasional pictures. It looks like this. Like there are no paragraph breaks. There are sentences with periods at the end, but aside from occasional pictures, there are no actual breaks in the narrative or anything like that. So that will be interesting. So that's everything. I finished the month of September. That's what I'm currently reading now in October. If you have thoughts about any of these books, I would love to hear that. Please feel free to let me know that down in the comments below. Let me know what you read and enjoyed in September. Let me know what you're reading right now in October or are excited to read in October. Thank you for watching this. I hope everyone is staying healthy and well. I hope you're doing good reading whatever you're reading. And until next time, would it kill you to call you mother?